Do you think the last bus of the night is just an ordinary ride? It might be 10,000 times more terrifying than you imagine. Let's step into the shoes of the sole survivor that night and take a look at Route 330's last bus, a vehicle that was never supposed to exist. On an autumn night in 1995, you boarded the last Route 330 bus. 3 men dressed in Qing Dynasty official robes hauled a companion reeking of alcohol onto the bus. Their faces were deathly pale, as white as paper. The conductor quietly warned you, "Don't touch them, they're not alive." The bus broke down suddenly after entering a tunnel. The conductor got off to check and never came back. An old man sitting next to you suddenly grabbed your hand and hissed, "Kid, get off with me, now!" You two ran like hell, and behind you, the bus vanished into thin air on the empty road. The next day, the news reported that the Route 330 bus had been pulled out of a reservoir 100 miles away. 5 corpses inside had been rotting for months. In the police files, your name and the old man's were listed among the deceased. In the fall of 1995, Beijing's night wind had already taken on a knife's edge, howling through bare branches, rustling dried yellow leaves that swirled under the dim streetlights and pelted hurried passers-by. The air was thick with a biting mix of coal, smoke, and dust, a uniquely northern scent of the ancient capital. You tightened your worn jacket around you, standing under the weathered bus sign at the Xijimen stop, yet the chill still pierced your bones like fine needles through the fabric. The last bus always came with a sense of being forgotten by the city. Only you were waiting on the platform, along with a hunched old man hidden in the shadows, face obscured, as still and silent as a statue. In the distance, 2 dim headlights pierced the dense darkness, wobbling closer. Route 330's metal shell shimmered under the streetlight with a greasy, exhausted sheen. The bus door hissed open with a wheeze like escaping steam, screeching with rust as it slowly pried itself ajar. A wave of hot air hit your face, reeking of cheap tobacco, old sweat, and motor oil. You stepped up. The coin box clanged hollowly. The bus interior was dim, lit only by a few dying bulbs above the driver's seat and midsection, casting faint outlines of human figures in the gloom. The driver was a middle-aged man, wrapped in a bulky navy cotton coat, his cap pulled low. Only half his stubbled, emotionless face showed, like he wore a stiff human skin mask. The conductor, a woman around 40, wore the same faded blue uniform. She sat on a small folding stool near the door, absently rolling crumpled fare tickets between her fingers, staring blankly out into the darkness, as if her soul had long since slipped away. Out of habit, you walked toward the rear of the bus and sat by a window. The plastic seat was cold, the chill seeping through your thin pants. The window was caked in grime and condensation, distorting the streetlights outside into blurry yellow smudges. The engine rumbled wearily beneath you. The bus shuddered slightly as it started up, tires hissing over the wet pavement, a sound that droned against your nerves. You closed your eyes, trying to push out the day's office politics and your boss's sour face, leaving only the aching desire to collapse into bed at home. Who knows how long had passed, maybe 1 or 2 stops, maybe more, when a sudden, jarring sound of footsteps broke the stagnant silence. Thud, thud, thud. Each step was stiff, dragging, strangely heavy, as if treading not on metal flooring, but soft, damp soil. You instinctively opened your eyes and looked toward the front. 3 men were boarding the bus. The moment you saw them, the temperature seemed to plummet. A chill shot from your tailbone to the top of your head. They wore garments straight out of an old movie or history book, deep blue robes, so dark they were nearly black, with wide horsehoof sleeves and intricate square patches embroidered on the chest and back. Qing Dynasty official robes. Their clothes looked bizarrely pristine, reflecting a hard, cold sheen under the dim lights. Their faces were ghostly white, like they'd been slathered in cheap plaster, devoid of color or life, expressionless as poorly made wax figures. The man in front was taller, his eye sockets sunken, gaze locked straight ahead into nothingness. The two behind him held up a limp companion by the arms. The one in the middle hung his head, features obscured, body limp as if boneless, propped up only by the men flanking him. A stench overwhelmed the bus, a reek of strong alcohol mixed with something musty and decayed, like old dirt and rotting plants. It choked out all other odors, turning your stomach. You instinctively held your breath and leaned back against the icy seat, trying to escape the stench. Everything about these three, their clothes, their condition, that smell reeked of something unnatural and deeply wrong. This isn't right. Your heartbeat kicked up, thudding wildly in your chest. You forced yourself to look away, out the window at the racing blur of lights, but the corner of your eye still caught the figures moving down the aisle. They headed straight for the back, their movements stiff and eerily synchronized, like puppets on invisible strings. The feet of the drunk dragged along the floor with a soft scraping sound that sent a shiver through your spine. As they passed the conductor's stool, the woman who had been staring out like a statue flinched barely, but unmistakably. She suddenly turned her head, eyes locking onto the three robed men, especially the one in the middle. Her face drained of the last trace of color, turning even paler than the men. Her lips trembled violently, her eyes brimming with a terror too deep for words, like she was seeing a demon crawling out of hell. She began to shake uncontrollably, her fingers gripping the metal handrail until her knuckles turned white. Her panicked gaze swept the bus like a drowning person searching for a lifeline, and then it met yours. In that instant, you clearly saw the horror on the edge of collapse flooding her eyes. She seemed to muster all her strength just to give the faintest, barely perceptible shake of her head. Her lips moved silently, then again, forming clear words without sound. You saw the shape burn into your vision. Don't touch them. The silent warning hit like a bucket of ice water. Every drop of blood in your body froze. Then came another mouth movement, more urgent and subtle. Not alive. Your heart stopped for a beat, then pounded back to life so hard it hurt. A numb chill spread from your feet upward. Not alive. What did that mean? A prank? A mad woman? You didn't dare finish the thought. The cold crept up your spine and exploded across your scalp. You stiffly turned your head back, not daring to look at the conductor again, let alone the strange passengers in the back. The silence in the bus was suffocating, broken only by the engine's monotonous roar and your own thunderous heartbeat. The air felt like solid lead. Every breath was a struggle. You stared at your hands on your knees, fingers ice cold, twitching slightly. Time slowed to a crawl, each second dragging like a century. The bus kept rolling through the pitch-black streets. Streetlight halos stretched, twisted, then vanished on the grimy windows. The buildings outside thinned, the lights grew sparser. Darkness consumed the world beyond the glass. The city lights faded behind you, and the bus plunged into the open countryside. Ahead, the gaping mouth of a tunnel loomed, like a beast waiting to swallow you whole. The bus didn't slow down, it barreled straight into the bottomless darkness. The headlights cast two swaying beams along the tunnel's rough cement walls, revealing grimy streaks and filthy stains. The engine's roar was magnified and warped by the narrow space, becoming a suffocating bellow that filled your ears. The weak cabin lights, already dim, seemed even more pathetic against the absolute dark. They barely lit the outlines of the seats and the people inside. The three figures in official robes at the back had completely vanished into the impenetrable darkness, as if they'd never existed. Only that pungent stench of alcohol mixed with decaying soil clung stubbornly to your nose, reminding you of their presence. You instinctively held your breath, body taut like a fully drawn bowstring, every sense heightened to capture the faintest movement in the dark. The tunnel felt endless, with only the repetitive thrum of tires against the pavement and the engine's roar cycling in your ears. Then screech, a harsh, grating metal on metal sound pierced the silence, followed by a few sputtering, agonized coughs from the engine, and then silence. All the lights inside the bus, including the dashboard, went out in the same instant. A pure, absolute darkness surged in like an icy tide, drowning the entire cabin, drowning you. You could even hear the rush of blood flooding your head. Silence fell, a silence even more terrifying than before. The engine was dead, the tires had gone quiet. All that remained was a vacuum-like hush, and your own ragged, panicked breathing. In the dark, stripped of your senses, fear exploded. You froze in your seat, drenched in cold sweat. "Shit!" came a muffled, irritated curse from the driver's seat, laced with disbelief. Then the creak of a spring as the seat was pushed back hard, followed by heavy footsteps fumbling toward the door. The driver groped around and opened a small toolbox near the console, pulling out an old-fashioned flashlight. Click a dim, weak, yellow beam flickered to life, barely illuminating the area around his feet and his anxious face. "Damn it, this bus is cursed," he muttered, swinging the light toward the pitch-black engine hood, then shaking the flashlight in frustration, as if doubting its power. As the beam swayed, you glanced at the conductor's spot. The folding stool was empty. She was gone. When did she get off? You hadn't noticed a thing. A deeper chill gripped you. The driver noticed too. He swept his light across the vacant seat, pausing for a moment. He muttered again, probably cursing her for abandoning her post. He didn't hesitate further. Flashlight in one hand, he tugged open the heavy door. A rush of cold tunnel air, thick with the smell of soil and oil, blasted in and made you shiver. He jumped off. The beam bobbed briefly outside the door as his footsteps headed toward the engine hood and vanished beyond view. The bus sank back into silence and total darkness. Only distant echoes remained, the faint clinking of tools, and his muffled curses bouncing eerily through the tunnel. Time dragged, each second stretching like an eternity. Your heart felt like it was about to leap out of your throat, and your back was drenched in sweat. How long had he been gone? 5 minutes? 10? Why hadn't there been any sounds of repair? Even the muttered cursing and tool noises had vanished. The tunnel was now filled with a suffocating, boundless silence. The darkness felt alive, pressing down on you. You strained to hear anything from outside: a cough, a footstep, but there was nothing. Fear bloomed like vines, twisting through your body. Were those three things in the back still there? What were they doing in the dark? You didn't dare turn around. You didn't even want to think. It felt like countless cold eyes were watching you. You clenched your fists, nails digging into your palms, trying to use pain to fend off the terror threatening to consume you. Just as your sanity teetered on the edge, a cold, bony, vice-like hand suddenly reached out from the darkness and clamped down on your wrist. "Ah!" You screamed in panic, jolted backward, the back of your head slamming into the icy bus window. A raspy, tense, commanding whisper sounded right beside your ear. It was the hunched old man who'd been sitting in the shadows at the stop. He was in the seat right next to you. You couldn't see his face in the dark, but you could feel the intensity in his eyes as they locked on you. "If you don't want to die here, get off the bus." His voice was low, each word squeezed through clenched teeth, trembling on the edge of collapse. Yet his grip on your wrist was ironclad, strong enough to shatter bone. "Now, right now, don't make a sound. Don't look back. Run." The urgency and fear in his voice were beyond argument, the kind only someone who had truly faced death could carry. That sudden command and the searing pain on your wrist struck like lightning through your frozen mind. "Get off? Now? In this pitch-black tunnel, miles from anything?" The thought flashed absurdly by. But the terror in the old man's voice and the crushing force on your wrist short-circuited your hesitation. The three ominous figures in the back, the missing conductor, the silent driver, this suffocating darkness, everything found its outlet. Run! No time to think. Survival instinct took over. You shot up from your seat so fast you knocked over an empty water bottle beside you. It clattered loudly to the floor, sharp sound that cut through the dead silence like a knife. You didn't dare think if the noise had drawn attention. The old man stood up at the same moment, surprisingly agile for someone so frail-looking. His cold hand still gripped your wrist like a steel clamp, yanking you toward the door. In the darkness, you stumbled behind him, crashing forward toward the open exit. The floor beneath your feet felt uneven, like walking on cotton. As you passed the middle of the bus, a flicker of movement from the shadowy back corner caught the edge of your vision. The feeling wasn't clear. It was more like an overwhelming wave of malevolent attention piercing your spine like icy needles. Every hair on your body stood up. "Move," the old man growled, tightening his grip and practically hurling you out the door. The cold tunnel air, thick with oil and earth, rushed into your lungs, making you cough violently. Your feet hit the cold, hard concrete. The tunnel was even darker than the bus, with only a pinprick of faint light in the distance marking the way out. Behind you, the Route 330 bus loomed in the dark like a massive steel coffin, its doors wide open, swallowed in black. "This way, run!" The old man barked, no hesitation in his voice. He dragged you toward the faint light at the tunnel's mouth, sprinting with shocking speed. You stumbled behind him, lungs burning, throat raw from the cold air like blades. The gaping door behind you felt like a mouth waiting to devour. You didn't dare look back. You just ran, mind blank with one thought. "Get away! From the bus! From the dark!" The tunnel stretched endlessly ahead. Your frantic footsteps echoed off the walls, multiplied and overlapped until it sounded like dozens of unseen pursuers chasing you. Every breath tasted of blood. Your lungs felt ready to explode. Your legs were leaden. But the old man's pull never weakened, if anything. It grew stronger, like an unstoppable engine. The light at the end of the tunnel slowly grew, first a dot, then a beam, then an egg, a flicker of hope amid a sprint through despair. Just when you were down to the last few dozen meters, close enough to make out the faint starlight and silhouettes of distant trees, an explosion of sound burst from the tunnel's depths. Whum! It wasn't an engine or metal crash, but the terrifying resonance of some massive, unseen force tearing through space, deep enough to stop your heart. The source, without a doubt, was the broken-down Route 330 bus. The moment that sound hit, the ground beneath you quivered ever so slightly. The air pulled inward with strange suction, like a vortex opening behind you. Your blood rushed to your head. A sharp whine filled your ears. "Don't look! Run!" The old man screamed, voice cracked with unspeakable terror, as if he'd seen something worse than death itself. He unleashed one final burst of strength, practically throwing you forward. You flew, crashing to the ground, knees and hands scraping against the rough cement. Pain flared, but you didn't care. You pushed yourself up and, against all instinct, looked back into the tunnel just as the sound cut off. The spot where the Route 330 bus had stood was completely empty. That massive, heavy bus, with its gaping doors and endless darkness inside, gone. In the blink of an eye, like a giant invisible hand had erased it from existence. Only the cold, bare tunnel floor remained, faintly reflecting the weakest threads of dawn light from the entrance, as if it had never been there at all. The world fell silent. The shrill ringing in your ears drowned everything. You sat on the ground, mouth open, unable to make a sound, only wheezing. Broken breaths rasped from your chest. A wave of disbelief and existential horror swallowed you whole. The bus, how could a vehicle that size just vanish? The old man had stopped too, a few paces ahead. He stood with his back to you, facing the now empty tunnel, his hunched silhouette trembling violently in the faint light, like a candle flickering in the wind. He didn't turn around or say a word. He just kept trembling violently, as if his soul had been drained along with that silent disappearance. The acrid stench of alcohol and rotting soil had vanished with the bus, leaving only the cold, primal smell of earth lingering in the tunnel. No one knew how much time passed, maybe a few seconds, maybe a full minute, when a faint engine noise came from afar, growing closer. A bright beam of headlights cut through the darkness at the tunnel's mouth, illuminating your crumpled form on the ground, and the old man standing stiffly like a shivering statue. A sharp siren tore through the stillness of the countryside night. Red and blue police lights spun wildly beneath the night sky, painting the area around the tunnel's mouth, where Route 330 had vanished like a bizarre stage. Several police cars and a tow truck screeched to a stop on the roadside. Uniformed officers and plainclothes detectives moved in haste, their flashlights crisscrossing the tunnel walls and the empty road, the air heavy as molten lead. You and the old man who had saved your life, he said his name was Lee, were now wrapped in blankets handed to you by the police, sitting in the back of a patrol car, still shivering uncontrollably. You had recounted that unthinkable night countless times. Every detail, the strange passengers, the conductor's warning, the breakdown in the tunnel, the driver's disappearance, that final haunting tremor, and the bus's vanishing was branded into your mind. Yet, Officer Zhang, the man questioning you, only furrowed his brow deeper with each word. He looked to be in his 40s, with a square jaw and sharp, tired eyes. A cigarette burned dangerously close to the filter in his fingers, unnoticed. Qing Dynasty robes, pale faces, not alive? He asked quietly, voice flat but laced with disbelief. He raised his eyes and swept his gaze over you and Mr. Lee like a searchlight. Are you sure you weren't just overtired? Hallucinating? Or maybe it was a prank? Those costumes, there are plenty of rental places these days. He paused, his tone carrying a trace of quiet absurdity. And a full-size bus just disappeared inside a tunnel? That goes against the laws of physics, doesn't it? Mr. Lee suddenly raised his head, bloodshot eyes blazing. His voice rose in a sharp, trembling cry. Officer Zhang! I'm over 70, with one foot in the grave! I know what's real and what's not. That conductor girl, when she looked at them, it was like she saw ghosts. She told me not to touch them. She said they weren't alive. I heard her as clear as day. His bony hands clutched the edge of the blanket, knuckles pale with tension. That bus, it just went whum and vanished. Right in front of me. If you don't believe me, go search right now. Scour the entire tunnel. Dig it up if you have to. See if you can find even a single scrap of that bus's metal. You opened your mouth, throat dry and aching, wanting to say something, but every word felt hollow against Mr. Lee's impassioned, helpless plea. He was right. There was no evidence. Nothing but your testimony and that of an old man who now seemed slightly unhinged. The driver's toolbox, the conductor's folding stool, even that fallen water bottle, all gone. Not a single trace left in the empty tunnel. Officer Zhang inhaled deeply on a cigarette that had already gone out, then irritably crushed it against the car frame, leaving a blackened smear. We'll search. Of course we'll search. His voice carried deep weariness. But you two, what you're describing is just... He searched for a word. Too bizarre. He sighed. We'll expand the search zone and investigate the driver and conductor's backgrounds. You two go home for now. Keep your phones on. We'll contact you with any updates. His tone was formulaic, a perfunctory reassurance, but the doubt in his eyes was tangible. Another officer drove you and Mr. Lee back into the city. As you got out, Mr. Lee grabbed your arm tightly, nails digging into your skin. His bloodshot eyes locked onto yours. His voice rasped, urgent and hoarse. Remember, kid, this isn't over. That thing, it'll come back for you. Mark my words. With that, he let go, hunched over, and vanished down a dim street corner like a real ghost, leaving you alone in the cold, surrounded by a growing fog of confusion and fear. His final words, "It'll come back for you," wrapped around your neck like a cold serpent. The days that followed felt like a strange bog. On the surface, everything returned to normal. You forced yourself back to work, drowning in paperwork and co-workers probing stares. You tried to numb yourself with busyness. But the tunnel, that rainy night, the conductor's ghost white face, the three stiff figures, Mr. Lee's desperate scream to run, the gaping black bus door after the tremor all replayed like an endless nightmare, leaping out at you in quiet moments, gnawing at your mind. Sleep became a luxury. Even when you did drift off, you were jolted awake by visions of a faceless white figure or a yawning black bus door. You'd wake, drenched in sweat. Food had lost all taste. Every bite felt like chewing wax. The police? Silent as the grave. Not a word. Officer Zhang's phone was always busy or unanswered. The news was silent, too. No mention of Route 330's bizarre disappearance. The bus, the passengers, the driver, the conductor that horrific rainy night had all been wiped from reality. Only your haunted memories and Mr. Lee's ominous warning echoed in your mind. This isolation, the feeling of being alone in your knowledge, unheard, unbelieved, was more suffocating than fear itself. You felt like a madman stranded on an island. On the fifth evening, dragging your lead-heavy body back to your cramped apartment, the stairwell reeked of cooking grease and cheap coal briquettes. You pulled out your key, slid it into the lock, turned click. The door opened. Out of habit, you reached for the light switch. Snap. A dim, incandescent bulb flickered on, chasing the shadows from your living room. But in that instant, your breath caught. You froze. There, on your chipped, paint-peeling coffee table, sat an envelope. Just a plain, ordinary brown envelope. No name, no postage, no stamp. It sat perfectly centered on the tabletop, which had been empty when you left. A chill shot up your spine, head prickling. Who brought it? When? How did they get in? The lock was untouched. Your heart thundered, nearly bursting through your chest. You slammed the door shut and pressed your back to the cold wood, eyes locked on the envelope like it was a coiled snake. The room was dead silent, except for your ragged, trembling breath. After what felt like an eternity, you forced yourself to move slowly, step by step, feet like lead, toward the table. Each step felt heavier than the last. Finally, you stood before it. Your hand trembled as you reached for the envelope. It was thin, probably, just one sheet inside. You held your breath and tore it open. A folded A4 page slipped out, densely packed with printed text. As it unfolded, your eyes locked onto the bolded title at the top. Internal Briefing. Major Traffic Incident Recovery and Preliminary Investigation at Miyun Reservoir, Beijing Suburbs. A briefing? Internal? How did it get here? Heart racing. You skimmed downward. The language was cold and clinical. Date: October 28, 1995. Location: Deepwater Zone, North Shore of Miyun Reservoir. Incident summary: at approximately 9 a.m., reservoir staff discovered a suspected submerged vehicle during a routine inspection. After emergency retrieval by a professional diving team around 3 p.m., the vehicle was confirmed as a blue and white public bus, license plate Jing A, verified to be a Route 330 bus operated by Bus Company Number 3. Vehicle condition: severe structural deformation, shattered windows, cabin and driver area packed with mud and water plants. Victims: 5 corpses found inside, each fixed in place by seatbelt. 1 in the driver's seat, 4 in passenger seats, mid and rear cabin. Corpses showed extreme decomposition. Preliminary autopsy estimated death occurred over 3 months ago. Identities under urgent verification. Initial assessment: cause of the vehicle's plunge unknown. The water's depth exceeded 40 meters and was far from any accessible road. How the bus reached the site remains a significant mystery. No brake marks or signs of collision found. Further technical and forensic analysis pending. Due to case sensitivity and public impact, all details are classified. Note: preliminary victim identification: Chen Mo, male, 26, employee of company per ID card. Li Dequan, male, 70, 1, retired, address, Hutong. Zhang Jianjun, male, 42, Route 330 driver, employee ID. Wang Shumei, female, 39, Route 330 conductor, employee ID. It felt like your skull had been split with a sledgehammer. Darkness engulfed your vision. A high-pitched ringing screamed in your ears. The world spun. Chen Mo, that was your name. Printed clearly at the top of the victim list. Li Dequan, that was old. Mr. Li. Zhang Jianjun, the driver. Wang Zhumei, the conductor. Only 5 names. Aside from the unidentified male. The other 4 stabbed through your chest like poisoned ice picks. Death time over 3 months ago. But you were on that bus just 5 days ago, mister. Li had pulled you off that bus alive 5 days ago. The driver and conductor were there 5 days ago. Then, who was on that bus with you that night? Those 3 pale-faced figures in Qing robes, the one being held up, was that the unidentified male? A bone-deep chill surged from your spine. Your limbs went numb. You couldn't feel your hands or feet. You couldn't breathe. Only your heart thrashed violently, erratically in your chest, dragging you into suffocating dread. You doubled over, dry heaving violently, but nothing came up, only bile scorched your throat. Impossible. This is impossible. Your hoarse voice echoed in the empty room, alien and full of despair. A prank? A forged report? Who did this? Why? Questions tangled around your brain like vines. But the feel of the paper, the font, The cold, official wording it all felt chillingly, undeniably real. Your gaze locked onto the printed date at the end, October 29, 1995. Today was October 30th. This internal briefing had been printed just yesterday. How did it get here? Who delivered it? That thing? Mr. Lee's words exploded in your ears like a curse. That thing will come back for you. And then the shrill ring of the telephone shattered the deathly silence of the room. Ring! 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 The sound sliced through the thick silence like a knife tearing open the frozen air. You jolted violently, your heart nearly leaping out of your throat as your terrified eyes snapped toward the source, the old landline phone on the coffee table in the corner. The red phone vibrated madly under the dim light, like a pulsating heart, its shrill, unrelenting ring blaring like a death knell. Who was it? The police? A colleague? Or that thing? You were frozen in place, cold sweat soaking your back in an instant. The phone kept ringing again and again like a cursed chant echoing in the empty room, battering your frayed nerves. Fear washed over you in wave after icy wave, threatening to drown you entirely. Pick up or don't. The ringing continued, relentless, as if it would never end. Trembling, you moved forward inch by inch, like a prisoner walking to his execution. Each step weighed a ton. Finally, you stood before the table, the phone screaming in your ears. You took a deep, shuddering breath that trembled in your lungs, reached out with ice-cold, shaking fingers, and finally grabbed the equally cold receiver. The moment it touched your ear, an ear-splitting, chaotic burst of static surged through like a scream of distorted signals being torn apart. Z. The noise lasted 3 or 4 seconds, stabbing at your eardrums. Then suddenly, as if a hand had cut the wire, the static stopped. The line went dead, utter, suffocating silence, so still you could hear your blood rushing in your veins. You held your breath, your heart pounding wildly in your throat, threatening to explode then. After a few torturous seconds, a voice came through. The voice was strange. It didn't sound transmitted through the phone. It felt like it echoed directly inside your head, with a quality that was not of this world. The tone was flat, emotionless, colder than anything human. Each syllable scraped like rusted metal against glass. The seat on the list is reserved. Waiting for you, come back. The voice stopped abruptly. Beep, beep, beep. The busy tone began hollow and endless. You threw the receiver as if it were a burning brand. It hit the floor with a heavy thud, bouncing a few times, the coiled cord twisting like a snake across the stained cement floor, before finally falling still. Only the faint, lingering beeping remained. A bone-deep, unstoppable cold surged through your body, freezing your blood and thoughts. The seat is reserved. Come back? Back where? To the bus submerged 40 meters under the reservoir. To the seat of a Chen Mo who's been dead for 3 months. Ah! A scream, raw with terror and despair, finally tore free from your throat and exploded in the tiny, crumbling room, only to bounce back from the icy walls, pounding your eardrums. Run. You had to run. Leave this place. Leave this city. Anywhere. Survival instinct drowned everything else. Like a caged beast gone mad, you lunged towards your bedroom, yanked open the top drawer of the old dresser, and grabbed a thick wad of cash, your savings from the past 6 months, stuffed it into your pocket. You didn't even bother changing. In your slippers, you flung the door open and stumbled out. The narrow stairwell echoed hollowly under your feet. You burst through the building's front door. The icy night wind slashed your face like a blade. You glanced around to orient yourself, then bolted in the direction of the nearest main road. Cars. People. Lights. Life. If you could just flag a cab, get to the train station, the airport, anywhere. The street was empty and quiet. Your elongated shadow dashed across the pavement under the streetlights, alone and frantic. You ran as hard as you could, your lungs burning, the slap of your slippers against the cold ground echoing loud and clear. Behind you, the apartment complex faded into darkness like a silent, massive tombstone. At last, lights appeared at the intersection ahead. You heard the faint hum of an engine. A flicker of hope ignited in your chest. You sprinted harder, reaching the wide sidewalk of the main road, scanning desperately for a cab. Then, out of the corner of your eye, you caught something at the entrance of the very side street you had just come from. Under the dull glow of the street lamp, a bus sat quietly. A blue and white bus. Route 330. It sat there like a beast lurking in shadow, body intact, windows glinting cold under the lights. The driver's seat was empty. The cabin inside was pitch black, except for the very front row, where three upright, blurry figures sat. They wore dark, old-fashioned clothes. The bus door, just like that night in the rain, stood wide open, revealing a gaping blackness like a mouth waiting to devour. It just sat there, silent, still, as if it had been waiting there since the beginning of time for you. Your sprint froze as if nailed to the pavement. Blood rushed to your head and froze into ice. Terror gripped you like a cold hand closing around your throat. You couldn't speak. You couldn't breathe. That open door, that bottomless dark, those stiff, shadowy figures in the front row, it was all the same as that nightmare night. The seat is reserved, waiting for you. Come back. The cold, inhuman voice echoed again in your mind, impossibly clear. Stiffly, you turned your neck like a rusted gear and looked at the giant, dark shop window beside you. It reflected the empty street, your own terrified, twisted face in the bus, silently parked behind you with its door wide open. And there, beside that open door, in the heavy shadows, the glass reflected a vague silhouette, a figure in a dark blue jacket. It stood stiffly, walking step by step toward the black opening. That jacket, it was identical to the one you were wearing. You looked down at your empty hands. The thick wad of cash, gone. Only a few brittle, yellow leaves clung to your pant leg. A freezing gust suddenly howled down the street, reeking of stagnant water and rotting earth. It chilled you to the bone. In the rearview mirror, no one was there.